My gosh.
Arrow thing is getting wore out.
Yeah. All right, 6 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us for the March 6, 2024 City Council meeting. We'll begin with approving or amending the agenda. Is there any adjustments to the agenda anybody like to make? Otherwise, I will take a motion to approve.
I'll approve. I'll
Make the motion, Abe,
Second.
Jay. So I've got a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. It looks like no deputy, so we will move on to consent agenda. Those items on the council agenda which are considered routine or non-controversial are included as part of the consent agenda. Unless a council member specifically requests that an item on the consent agenda be removed and considered separately, items on the consent agenda are considered under one motion, a second, and a vote. Any item removed from consent agenda shall be placed at the end of general business. Today on the consent agenda, we have 4 items. Item 3.1 is approve the February 20th, 2024 City Council meeting minutes. 3.2 is to approve the February claims. 3.3 is approve hire of a public works maintenance worker. 3.4 approve resolution 2024-10 approving plans and specifications, ordering advertisements for bids. Is there anything that anybody would like to remove and consider separately? Otherwise, I'll take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you, Jay.
A second.
Thank you, Abe. I've got a motion and a second to approve consent agenda as written. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Open forum. The public forum is intended to afford the public an opportunity to address concerns to the council. The public forum be no longer than 30 minutes in length, and each presenter will have no more than 5 minutes to speak. Topics of discussion are restricted to local governmental topics. The council may discuss but will not take formal action on public forum presentations. Tonight, we have one person signed up for open forum, and that would be Tina. Just again, reminder that if you want to speak in open forum, that we do ask that you sign up ahead of time. Not that we're going to cut you off and say no, it just makes the process a little bit smoother if we have all the stuff filled out ahead. So
It's your butt.
hold it down until the light comes on. There you go. Good evening, Tina.
Evening. I just wanted to encourage you and thank you for those of you that did write to our representatives, John Kosnick and Zach Duckworth. And wanted to remind you, if you haven't, and also the citizens of Credit River, to vote down Bill HF 4009, which forces cities, including Credit River, to allow various types of multi-unit housing, even up to 150 feet, without any type of review or public petition. So these housing units would obviously be of great effect on our community, our current infrastructure, our police and emergency responders. That would have to change. And if you don't know how to contact those representatives, you can either speak to me afterwards, or I encourage you to go out on the Facebook page, I Love Credit River. Knowing these changes that the state is coming down possibly on us just makes me feel stronger about having a direction or a vision for our city. And I just wanted to remind you guys that back in September, the Credit River Rural Alliance did give you 2 versions of our vision for the Credit River. So I can email those to you again after the meeting. If you have any questions, we are doing this without any charge. So that's wonderful. It's $25,000. And at least it's a good start. So I encourage you to look at that again. The other bill that is on the docket is Bill HF 4331. And that is a bill that is abolishing the Met Council. So we have talked a lot about the Met Council and what it's forcing cities around us to do. So I encourage you, if that is something that you don't want, the Met Council giving the direction to your city to go again and contact John Kosnick and Zach Duckworth. And that will be it for me for now, but I'm gonna give you this before it goes in your circular files, just a reminder of our vision.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I put it in blue,
Can't lose it.
just different. You're welcome.
All right, thank you, Tina. Would anybody else like to speak in open forum tonight? Yeah, please turn out. Just hold it down until it's black. Awesome, thank you. All right, see no other open forum presentations tonight. We'll move on to general business 7.1, selection of city engineer, Administrator Reynolds.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. So tonight we have back in front of us the selection for the city engineer from the request for proposals or request for qualifications that we had sent out. So I kind of just put together a brief presentation to kind of go over what we have and what came out of the discussions from the selection committee. So city engineer, the RFP was released, council authorized that release in November 20th, 2023. Is released as part of the council's goals and objectives established in August of 2022 to review the contract services for the city attorney, the city planner, and the city engineer to ensure that we were in the best position to move forward as a city. Selection committee was Councilor Schummer, Councilor Satterbach, and myself. We were formed to review the proposals and make a recommendation to the council. So 8 proposals were received, 4 firms were interviewed, and there was a 2-1 split reached on a recommendation of the selection committee, which forwarded 2 proposals to the council for consideration and for a final selection to be made. Just kind of put this together. I'm not going to go through all the stuff that's on here. This was out in the packet, but this is kind of just an overview. It wasn't all of the bullets under the RFP for the scope of services that we were looking at. But we had, kind of the key pieces: general and project management, construction services, preparation of engineers' reports and technical correspondence, city meetings, constituent request engagement, working with constituents, and then kind of the other kind of catch-all category. So just kind of an overview of the different items that were in the RFP for the scope of services that we were looking for with the proposal. 2 additional areas were for water engineering and planning. And that was looking at the planning and project management for those projects and engineering, and then wastewater engineering and planning. So the selection committee recommendation, like I said, 2 firms were forwarded because there was a split and a single recommendation was not reached out of the selection committee. So the recommendation came forward with a recommendation for Hawkinson Anderson. That recommendation was really based on continuity of services. They've worked with the township since, the city since about 2004. And just kind of focused here, kind of put in a reference point, city engineer that was proposed. Coming out of the proposal, just referenced that they had 23 years municipal experience. Bollig was the second recommendation firm that was recommended out of the selection committee. And
Rick, you're right here. You don't need to watch YouTube as well.
I need to like stop hearing myself waiting in the background. So Bollig was recommended, was the second firm that was recommended, and the recommendation really for Bollig was forwarded based on the full scope of the services that they provided. Basically looking at kind of the broader scope of bringing public works experience, project management experience, and project funding there. City engineer, once again, just kind of pulled out a piece here. City engineer proposed there with 30 years city engineer and public works director experience. Just did the comparison that this was conversations that the selection committee had as kind of the comparisons as we were looking at the firms. Looking at the projects, the scope of services that was there. So you can see Hawkinson Anderson, city engineer, kind of under the city engineer scope of services back from the earlier slide. The key differences in the pieces that we're pulling out were the public works planning. They didn't have public works experience proposed. The funding and assistance management, their proposal put in there that they would provide documents to the city for the city to complete the applications. And the project management side, coming through the interviews, was not to project manage with other outside engineering contractors. Kind of as we look at that. Following on those same services, we had the public works planning. The proposed city engineer was also a public works director. So they bring the public works experience, the funding and assistance management. They have a needs funding assessment and strategy. I'm gonna move something here so I can see. Strategy provided at no cost, and then they assist with grant writing through project funding administration. Project management, manage projects with outside engineering contractors looking out for the best interest of the city. CSTS experience was not a requirement that we had in there, but to project manage or be available to manage on the CSTS sides, given our 3 systems. Hawkinson Anderson, kind of your comparisons here, they don't have the experience on the staff. We have subcontracts with an engineering firm that's been helping us with our CSTS systems. The Bollig would have experience with the CSTS personnel on staff. Scott County experience was discussed at the last meeting. Both firms have experience in Scott County. And then water planning and engineering, wastewater planning and engineering. Not a lot of sub bullets underneath those. They both have experience and expertise in doing that work. Cost comparison as we look at them, Hawkinson Anderson, city engineer is 138. The assistant city engineer is at 128. Hawkinson Anderson has charged for attendance at city council meetings and planning commission meetings, and mileage charged for other workers except for the city and the assistant city engineer. Bollig, the city engineer, is 165. As we discussed at the last meeting, they said they're involved more with the oversight direction policy. The assistant city engineer would be doing the majority of the daily work at 135. Bollig doesn't charge for attendance at city council meetings and planning commission meetings, and no charge for client communications less than 30 minutes, and mileage is not charged. So that's kind of the overview, summarizing kind of what the selection committee had talked about and some of the big pieces and discussions that were had as to why the 2 and why it kind of came down to, that split decision. I thought tonight, last time I didn't go really into a lot of details on my recommendation, and I thought tonight I would kind of hit a little bit more on why my recommendation was it, and then let the other 2 from the selection committee kind of talk to it as well. My recommendation was with Bollig. There was 2 on the Bollig recommendation for going forward with that. It's really looking at the full scope of services. As I've had some communications with council members since the last meeting. I look at what we have coming down the path as far as the city is concerned. The simple one is just looking at water and wastewater and all of the additional pieces that go along with those projects. When we look at, the SCADA systems for the operations, the metering systems and the metering infrastructure that will need to do the metering, the meters and the selection of the meters that will be needed for the water system. Utility billing integrations with all of that, the utility ordinance, the rate study, and developing all of those pieces to that puzzle, which all need to be managed hand in hand with the engineering for the infrastructure that's going in under the ground. We get to the end of the day, if we have the engineering plans and everything ready to go in under the ground and we don't have that stuff ready and to go, we're not ready to go. And when we start looking at funding, we need to be looking at that holistically cost and putting all that together and bringing that public works experience along with it and that project management to move all of that together in a cohesive piece. Is, as I look at it, to say it's a critical piece for the community. And as we look at, you know, if you just do city engineer in a vacuum, you look at the broader scope. Usually if you're doing that, then they have public works experience and staff members on staff that are kind of doing that larger project management. We don't have that on our staff at this point in time. And this is the way of bringing that in for the city to help us and to keep those things moving forward. So the water and the wastewater is just one small piece of all that. We start talking capital planning, stormwater management, and looking at all of those things and having that availability and that assistance to kind of put all of that together for us and to help us so we don't have to bring public works. I mean, we're bringing in public works maintenance, but not to bring in that manager or that director level person at this point in time, and to be able to hold off on something like that until we get further into the future. But having that available and having that working on our staff and working with us, as I look at it and make the recommendation, is that's critical for us. So, you know, that kind of where we go with the decision tonight, would go with future follow-on recommendations. And I say if we go with a decision with Hawkinson, we have to have that stuff. And so then the next piece that I would be doing is looking at how do we bring those services in and how do we accomplish that piece of it as well. So it's kind of my recommendation, why it's there. You know, it's not to do with the engineering side. I think the engineering side, you know, both sides would do great for us. I think both firms will be great, but I think as we look at the bigger piece of the public works, project management, and then even just the funding assistance and working through the funding assistance, we talked about that a lot at the last meeting, but I think those are important for the city and why my recommendation as part of the selection committee went that direction. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I don't know if the other two from the selection committee want to add anything additional, Mayor, but
Okay,
turn it over to the council for discussion.
thank you, Kathy. Council members, discussion.
I'll yield the lead, right?
Is there anything you want to add?
I just think that Hawkinson Anderson has done a good job for us, and she should remain as our engineering firm. So
Okay,
Okay. I went back and looked at a lot of this. I've looked at it a few times, so I understand kind of what our needs are, whether we like what our needs are gonna be or not. But we are, you know, we are facing a lot of different things that come up. If you read the RFP that is here, one firm essentially answered all of the requests in the RFP. The other one is offering to do about half of what we asked for. You know, that's what it is. I will say this. If you go down through that in other items, the first bullet point is work with other engineering firms as directed by city on specific projects. That doesn't mean that Hawkinson can't do work for us, that they can't do lift stations, that they can't do a number of things. They can. What we need though is we either need to hire a public works administration to go through everything else that was asked for in this RFP, or we just don't do it and we run into trouble going down the road and we pay too much for everything because we'll pay for it. We won't have SAC, which is sewer access charges, or WAC, which is water access charges. We won't have those properly calculated. That's part of what we're asking for in this proposal, in this RFP. We're asking for that. We need help budgeting that. We need help figuring out what our total infrastructure costs are so that they are actually built into WAC charges, SAC charges, metering, and, you know, our actual utility fees that we actually charge for this. That's the budgeting process that's asked for in that. That's what a public works director does, or, you know, or a public works engineer, which is what we're asking for. What we're getting is we're getting one that tells us that basically included and answered the RFP. Most of the firms that actually answered that also did. Bolton and Mink was another one that was pretty close. I just looked at between the two. I went back and I felt stronger about Bollig as being the better of the two. What we're not getting with that is we're not getting that from Hawkinson. Hawkinson's worked on projects that had grants and funding. However, almost all of those projects, correct me if I'm wrong, were actually with cities that have a public works person or an official in there that you're working under, correct?
Correct.
Okay, you wanna?
If you want to, we can.
I think that, we asked questions back and forth last time, and I don't
Yeah.
know
We didn't get
that,
anywhere?
we didn't get anywhere, I don't think, well, we got some answers, but
Mhm.
I don't think it, it didn't get us across the finish line with our
Okay.
discussion, but.
Alright.
So
So, and then going back from the other, there was questions whether or not Bollig had experience in Scott County. The prime engineer that they're actually looking at having be a person was city engineer for both Prior Lake and Shakopee at different times, which are the two largest entities in Scott County. So I think that there's experience. In my recommendation is to go with Bollig because they're giving a full package. We can actually still, that doesn't mean that Hawkinson can't do the work because they could actually, there will be probably over time be a lot of different work where they can do the engineering for it, which is what they want to do, as far as I know. So that's my 2 cents.
Bill, any comments?
No, I made all my comments at the last meeting. I did look into other firms that help with funding for cities, and there's plenty of them out there, so that satisfied me. So
Mhm.
I don't necessarily agree with everything Jay said in terms of we need this now. I've been going to city council meetings for 7 years. I've never heard one complaint about the service we get and the work product we get from our
Mhm.
current vendor. And I really think, this is just my opinion, because I guess I didn't study the RFP. To me, it was scope creep. I thought we were comparing the engineering services for our city. And I think after looking at what they do for us, which I have heard no complaints, and then comparing what Bollig does, and I'm sure they're a very fine firm. But when you look at the cities that they work in, they're 150 to 300 population cities. I don't think that's comparable to us. So I give it less importance of them having all that other stuff in their business. I think the funding that they get is a lot easier with a small city than it would be for us. We have a very, I guess you can call it a rich city in terms of like market values and all that. I don't think we get a lot of funding other than the sewer water maybe. So I'm ready to vote. So that'd be my thoughts.
Okay. Maybe anything you want to add or?
No, other than I think your last point is where I kind of landed to is, what kind of funding are we really gonna qualify for? And the RFP, I think we should take a little more time with that.
Okay. Well, anybody has any comments, questions, or somebody wants to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve Hawkinson Anderson for our city engineer.
Okay,
I'll second it.
second by Leroy. So I've got a motion and a second to approve Hawkinson Anderson to be continued as our city engineer. All in favor, say aye. Anybody opposed?
Nay.
One opposed. Motion passes 4-1. All right. With that, we'll move on to staff and council member updates. Administrator Reynolds, you got building permit reports?
Set up. I'll start with, as I dig up that one, start with elections, and if you don't mind, I'll start with the
Yeah.
second one, and I'm gonna pull up my my presentation here on the other one. But the elections, just kind of as a notice, we had yesterday, and was elections ended up how many days of early voting, and everything else was Saturday voting, Monday voting, and then yesterday, the actual election day. We had 639 voters that took part either in early voting or yesterday in election day, which was about a 16% turnout for Credit River. which gave us a little bit. They had about 15% turnout across Scott County, so we were maybe 1% better than the Scott County average. As we look at it, the Cleary Lake was our first time for using Cleary Lake for precinct 1. Everybody took some getting used to. Some people got their first as their first stop. Some people stopped here at the city hall and then got redirected over to Cleary Lake. But the facility did turn out and work good for us. It was a good first run for that facility, and looking at it to say, how do we utilize it for the next election to make sure that we are, set up and ready to go. So I think it was a good first go with a smaller election this year. So we are looking forward to moving forward with that one in August for the second election of the year.
Yeah, I agree. I think it went well when I went through there as well. Who would have thought that the driving range would have been open and there would have been that many people there during voting time? You pull in, the parking lot's full and you walk in and nobody's in there voting. So, yeah.
So
So, I mean, it would have been great if you brought your clubs with. Voted, then swung a little bit, right?
So, and then I will jump to the February building report. Took me a little while, sorry, to find that one and pull it up. So this year we can kind of do some cross back and look at last year and kind of do a comparison as we look at it. So as we look, last year, January, we had 10 permits issued. This year in January, we had 27. February, last year we had 15. This year we've had 19. So we're seeing an increase in the amount of permits that we've had through January and February coming in. As we kind of look across the board, 63 applications versus 42 for the first 2 months of the year in 23. New home construction for January and February, we've had 1 permit already issued by the end of February for new home. Major permit valuation was at 760. I think that's just the new home. I think that was just the new home construction. So that's at 760, but we're going there. Total permit fees so far it's at $34,000 for January and February. So we're seeing a busier year so far than we saw in 2023 as we look at it.
Are these numbers pulled from a system?
Yes. It's pulled out of our Citizen Serve, which is our permitting system. So that's where I say like the permit fees, we have this 34 number that's on here, but it doesn't always necessarily match up with the financial because of some of that may include like an escrow payment or something. So
Correct. It includes.
yeah.
This number.
So this is just kind of looking at a gross dollar figure and not pulling that apart right at the moment. Any other questions on that? Otherwise,
Okay.
pull that one down. And then I just had one last to kind of do an update on the Stonebridge CSTS system. We did get the final permit was issued and we received that from MPCA in the last week. So that has come in. In addition, the letter approving the plans and specifications has been received that's the other day. So that is all moving forward and getting ready for obviously the plans and specifications that were approved to be released for bidding at tonight's meeting. So that is continuing to move forward.
Okay, good.
That's all I have for this evening.
All right, thank you. Abe, anything?
No.
Leroy?
Blade gravel road, so
Yeah,
getting bumpy.
yeah, I imagine. Okay, good. I've got 2 items. Number 1, if any of you guys missed it and have some time, interesting, the county assessor did a presentation to the county board on Tuesday during the county meeting. Worthwhile going back and watching it, as there's a lot about, how they do the assessed values of homes and what it looks like coming up into this next year. He'll be doing that same presentation at Scale Friday morning. If you're board and want to go over to the Link Center at Mystic on 7:30 Friday morning, you can watch it in person again. I think it'll be a little different. He'll refine it a little bit, but not too much. So great presentation though. A lot of good information there. And then just a dovetail on, we had a, resident Tina spoke in open forum about House File 4009. Couple of the pieces on that, I had some bullet points here written out. As I kind of said, multifamily, this bill as written today would allow multifamily buildings into heights up to 150 feet in any commercial district, regardless of infrastructure, right? So imagine a lot in Credit River with septic and a 150-foot tall building on it, right? Now, some of this says, within a quarter mile of a transit corridor, but if it also says if you don't have that transit corridor, you have to designate one. So you don't get around it by not having it. Allow densities up to 2 to 6 per lot, not per acre, per lot, right? So if you have a lot, you can have up to 2 to 6, right? So I think the biggest things in this really is that it eliminates any local control, any public input into your zoning and all that. And so anyways, read it for yourself, contact your legislatures, contact people that that know other legislatures, because ours are against it, but there's others that are not. So with that said, scale, we collaborated on a letter that went today to Senator Port's Housing Committee that convened this afternoon. So that letter went there. I think if you guys are all okay, I'd like to do one from Credit River as well. Additionally, I collaborated with several other local mayors around the cities. We have a piece we sent to the Star Tribune this week. And I think, so there's more media releases and stuff coming forward on that. So keep an eye on that one, because that one is ugly as written. So I think that's it. That's all I got. Jay, anything? No? Bill?
I have one thing, the mayor, city administrator, myself, we attended a meeting with Sheriff Hennon, Captain Williams, who's in charge of operations, and Cassie, and I don't know her last name, but she's a contract administrator, I think, for the sheriff's office. And we met to talk about the annual report that they give us each year. Sheriff Hennon's gonna be here on March 18th to present the report that we were presented with. So I'm not gonna steal his thunder, but we have a real good relationship with the sheriff's department. I think they're happy with us. We're happy with them. And you'll hear more about it on March 18th.
Yeah, perfect. All right. Sounds good. Thank you, Bill. All right. Anybody else have anything? Otherwise,
Mr. Mayor, just one thing quick.
Yeah, Shane.
Piece of information. Last week we received a updated Markley Lake study.
oh,
And I just ordered that link to Kathy, today.
okay.
So if anybody has an interest in reviewing that, the updated link, it's a huge file. It's a couple hundred megabytes, so it can't be emailed. So you have to use a link to download it. But at some point that will be coming forward to the city council for discussion, and it's a big project. It's a lot of reading. So if you want to get a jump on it, simultaneous with our review, the DNR is reviewing it as well. So
Okay. Shane, has, with that, are they looking at what point are they at? Because I know we had a lot of steps in that. I thought at some point that they were contracted to do, public engagement, open house type of situation. I don't remember if we did that or not.
I don't believe they held an open house. They
Okay.
did send.
They did a
mailings
survey.
out, Yeah,
Yeah.
the people that directly abutted the lake.
Mm-hmm.
And, we were expecting everybody to send comments back saying the water's too high, we want you to manage this water so it doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
not so high. But a lot of people said that they're concerned with how low it is. And that was actually a surprise. So, I'm not sure how we manage that. I don't think we're gonna pump water into the lake.
Especially one where we have problems when it gets high.
But it might change our strategy, because if we're okay with more bounce, you can, pump that stormwater down before, use kind of predictive management.
Yeah.
So pump that water down before a storm, especially before a large storm is predicted,
Mhm.
and let it bounce up. And if we're not able to have much leeway with the water levels, it might kind of change the recommended strategy when it gets to.
Yeah.
preliminary bounds.
Okay. Okay. Well, good. I've heard a lot of the residents, at least in Credit River, down in the couple on the lake, that have been asking me about it, because I think the original scope of the contract was supposed to be done by now.
That's correct.
Yeah.
It's been
It's been delayed.
within the last.
It has been.
One quick thing, Mr. Mayor, Shane, are we gonna have to do any type of dredging? You know, kind of on our end there where the drain, I know it's a little island starting to build up there, or are they gonna try and do anything on the prior lake end that's eroded into it quite a bit too and filled it in, so.
Possibly, that was not part of the study.
Okay.
You know, if there's erosion, like sediment that's, a sediment plume from street runoff or something like that, that is allowable to go in and remove that. Usually requires some kind of a permitting,
Mhm.
but it's usually allowable. But as far as just dredging a lake, that is, a much more extensive permitting process and outside of the scope.
Yeah.
of the study. So like, you know, adding more volume. would not
Yeah.
be-
Okay. Interested to read it. So, all right. Thank you, Shane.
Kind of make the motion to adjourn.
Yeah. Aiden,
I'll second it.
you're right. Motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Here none. Motion passes. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Dang, that one out. You didn't have a